It all started with the mundane, the kind of boring chore you forget by lunchtime. A simple request from my wife to finally clear out the dank crawl space in our new old house. A Victorian relic we'd bought for its character and its suspiciously low price. A place nestled on a street that sunlight seemed to deliberately avoid. The air in the crawl space was thick and cold, smelling of damp earth and century-old decayed wood. A clinging moisture that seeped through my jeans and into my bones as I crawled on my hands and knees, the beam of my flashlight dancing over forgotten junk and generations of dust. I pushed aside a cobwebbed steamer trunk, its leather cracked and brittle, and there it was, tucked away in the farthest, darkest corner where the brick foundation met the dirt. A small porcelain-faced doll, its paint faded and chipped, one glass eye missing, leaving a deep, black socket that seemed to stare into nothingness. It was unsettling. Sure, a creepy little thing, but I'm a rational man, or I desperately needed to believe I was. So I shrugged off the chill down my spine and tossed it into a cardboard box with some other junk, a broken clock, a few mildewed books, thinking nothing of it, just a forgotten relic of some long-gone child's abandoned playtime. That night, the noises began. Not the usual groans and creaks of an old house settling, but a distinct, rhythmic scratching, a dry, persistent sound like tiny fingernails were being dragged slowly, deliberately, along the hallway floorboards right outside our bedroom door. I told myself it was mice, even as my heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, the sound so patient and so unervingly intelligent. I lay there frozen until dawn, my wife sleeping peacefully beside me, oblivious. The next day, driven by a gnawing curiosity and a rising dread, I checked the box in the garage, and the doll was gone. My stomach dropped. My wife hadn't touched the box. With a cold knot tightening in my gut, I went back to the crawl space, and there it was, back in its same dirt niche, sitting upright as if it had never moved, as if it had been waiting for me. I threw it away again, this time marching it straight to the outside bin, feeling a grim finality as I slammed the lid shut. That night, the scratching was louder, closer, right at the very base of our door, and then it was accompanied by a sound I can never forget, a wet, gurgling whisper, a child's voice that was somehow ancient and deeply wrong, saying my name, Michael, drawn out into a sibilant hiss. I froze, my blood turning to ice in my veins, unable to even breathe, clinging to my sleeping wife's form, praying for the sun to rise, feeling like a child myself, terrified of the dark. The following morning, I found the doll on our kitchen table, its single good eye staring directly at the chair where I always sat for breakfast. And that's when I noticed the new detail, the smell, a faint, sweetly cloying odor of rot that seemed to emanate from its porcelain skin and tiny cloth body. I lost it then, the rational man shattered into a million terrified pieces. I grabbed the vile thing, my skin crawling at its touch, ran to the backyard, and with a savage, terrified fury, I smashed it over and over with a heavy hammer, shattering the porcelain head into 100 pieces, grinding the fragments into the dirt with my heel, destroying the cloth body, feeling a wild, primal satisfaction. The house was silent that night, a deep, profound silence that felt like a reward, a blessing, and I slept for the first time in days, a heavy, dreamless sleep. It was a week later, a fragile, false sense of security carefully rebuilt, when my wife, her face pale and confused, came to me holding a small, bundled form and asked me why I'd bought a new doll, an exact, perfect replica of the one I destroyed, and placed it on our infant daughter's crib while she was napping. My blood ran cold, my mouth went dry. I hadn't left the house. I raced to the nursery, my heart a trapped bird beating against my ribs, and there it was, pristine, perfect, both glass eyes intact and gleaming, staring blankly at my sleeping baby girl. And as I watched, horrified, utterly paralyzed and unable to move, its head slowly turned, its painted lips curled into a tiny, knowing, and cruelly intelligent smile, and it whispered, just for me, a voice that was now clear and cold as ice. She's mine now. The rational world is gone, completely obliterated, replaced by this constant, gnawing dread that lives in the pit of my stomach, because I understand now, with a certainty that is slowly destroying my mind, that the thing, the entity, the presence wasn't in the doll anymore. The doll was just a vessel, a door, and I, in my fear and anger, had smashed the door open wide, and now it's free. It's in the walls, it's in the shadows, it's in the very air we breathe, and most terrifying of all, it's wearing my daughter's skin, and it smiles at me with her eyes, and I know with every fiber of my being that I will never, ever get her back. My grandfather always warned me about the old woods behind our family farm, saying they were twisted, a place where the compass of God himself spun wild, and I, in the arrogance of youth, just laughed, attributing it to the ramblings of a superstitious old man who'd spent too many solitary years listening to the wind in the pines. The truth, cold and unforgiving, found me the summer I was 16, bored and restless, when I discovered his old camcorder in the attic, a bulky, fantasy relic from the 80s that weighed a ton, and on a stupid dare from my friends, decided to venture into those woods to make a documentary, debunking the local ghost stories once and for all. The air was different the moment I crossed the crumbling stone wall that marked the property line, growing colder, stiller, the vibrant birdsong of the sunny fields cutting off into an absolute silence as if a switch had been thrown, leaving only the sound of my own nervous breathing and the crunch of my footsteps on the thick layer of dead leaves. I narrated into the camera, putting on a brave face for my imaginary audience, joking about spooky stories and gullible people, but a prickle of primal unease was already tracing its way up my spine, a deep-seated feeling that I was an unwelcome guest in a place that demanded solitude. That's when I saw it through the electronic viewfinder. A figure, a man, standing perfectly still between two gnarled, ancient oaks about 50 yards away. He was tall, impossibly thin, and dressed in what looked like a black suit that was too long for his limbs, the sleeves and trousers draping over his hands and feet. His face a pale, featureless smudge from that distance. I lowered the camera, my heart skipping a terrified beat, blinking to clear my vision. But when I looked with my own eyes, there was nothing there, just the dappled shade and the silent, watching trees. I raised the camera again, my hand now trembling noticeably, and he was still there, closer now, maybe 30 yards, his head tilted at an unnatural, broken angle, and I still couldn't make out any details, no eyes, no nose, just that blank, white expanse that refused to resolve into a face. A cold dread, solid and heavy, settled in my stomach. I dropped the camera, the plastic casing cracking loudly against a jagged rock, the sound unnaturally loud in the suffocating silence, and I ran. I ran like I had never run before, branches whipping at my face and arms like grasping fingers, the feeling of being watched a physical weight on my back, a palpable malevolence pushing me forward, driving me out of that awful place. I burst from the tree line into the warm sunlight of the pasture, gasping for air, and told myself it was a trick of the light, a glitch in the old technology, my mind playing tricks in the oppressive atmosphere, anything to rationalize the sheer, undiluted terror I had felt. I forgot about the broken camcorder for days, shoving the memory of the incident into a dark corner of my mind, until my grandfather found it in my backpack and, being from a generation that fixed things rather than threw them away, managed to repair the casing and get it working again. He played the tape back on the old wooden cabinet television in the den, a stern, unreadable look on his weathered face as the grainy footage flickered to life. The recording was exactly as I remembered. My nervous, forced narration, the dense, shadowy trees, and then the figure appearing between the oaks. But on the TV screen, viewed through the lens of that old device, it was horrifyingly clearer. It wasn't a man in a suit at all. The black wasn't fabric. It was a shifting, oily darkness that clung to her emaciated skeletal frame, moving like liquid shadow, and the face wasn't featureless. It was covered in a seething, crawling mass of insects, beetles and centipedes and other, unnameable things pouring from where its eyes and mouth should be, a living, writhing mask of chitinous life. And as the figure tilted its head on the screen, the swarm seemed to part for a single horrifying moment, and I saw, deep within the writhing mass, a single human eye wide with an ancient, knowing terror, an eye that was trapped and screaming from inside that thing, and it was staring not at the camera, but directly at me, through the lens, through time, as if it had been waiting for me specifically to come and witness its eternal torment. My grandfather slowly reached over and turned off the television, the screen dissolving into a shrinking dot of light, his face ashen. He didn't look at me when he spoke. his voice a low gravel of fear and resignation. I told you, boy. Some things don't want to be recorded. Some things, once you see them, they know you can see them. And that makes you interesting to them. I never went back into those woods, and I never spoke of it to my friends. The dare forgotten in the face of a terror too real for boasting. But sometimes, in the dead of night, even now years later in my city apartment, I'll wake from a deep sleep and see a tall, dark shape standing in the corner of my room. A slice of absolute blackness that drinks the light from the streetlights outside, and just before my trembling hand finds the lamp switch, plunging the room back into mundane reality, I'll hear the faint, skittering sound of 1,000 tiny, scurrying legs. It was supposed to be a simple babysitting job, easy money for a broke college student, watching little Lily in her family's sleek, modern apartment while her wealthy parents enjoyed a rare night out at some charity gala. They were nice, normal people, showing me where the gourmet snacks were, the emergency numbers on the fridge, and casually mentioning, almost as an afterthought, "Oh, and if Lily talks to the man in the wall, just humor her. It's her imaginary friend. She's had him for about a year now." I laughed it off, of course, what kid doesn't have one? I'd had an invisible dog named Sparky myself. The parents left in a cloud of expensive perfume and tuxedoed confidence, the heavy door clicking shut behind them, and the silence of the lavishly decorated apartment descended. A quiet so profound I could hear the hum of the stainless steel refrigerator. Lily, a sweet, quiet girl of 5 with big brown eyes, was happily drawing at the glass coffee table, her crayons scratching rhythmically. It was an hour in, while I was mindlessly scrolling on my phone, that she looked up from a violent scribble of red and black and said, her voice clear and matter-of-fact, "The man in the wall says you have pretty eyes." A chill, slight but undeniable, went through me, a tiny alarm bell ringing in the back of my rational mind. "That's nice, Lily," I said, trying to sound cheerful and unfazed. She went back to her drawing, and a few minutes later, she added without looking up, "He says he wants to see what they look like on the inside." My blood ran cold. This was no longer cute. This was specific, visceral, and deeply unsettling. I called her over, trying to keep my voice steady, a feat that was becoming increasingly difficult. "Lily, honey, is the man in the wall real? Can you see him?" She nodded earnestly, her little face serious. "He lives in the cracks. He's thin because the cracks are thin. But he can get out if he really wants to. He stretches." I decided to abort the quiet evening and put on a cartoon, something loud and bright and full of primary colors to drown out the sudden, oppressive silence that seemed to be thickening in the room. As the upbeat theme song filled the room, I saw it out of the corner of my eye. A shadow in the hallway, long and impossibly slender, stretching from a hairline crack in the drywall near the ceiling. It wasn't cast by anything in the room. It was just there, a slice of absolute blackness that seemed to drink the light around it, a two-dimensional silhouette that felt more solid than it should. I spun my head, and it was gone. The hallway was just a hallway again. My phone buzzed in my hand, making me jump. A text from Lily's mother. "Everything okay?" The baby monitor in Lily's room just went to static for a second. I couldn't bring myself to tell them. What would I say? The rest of the night was a slow burn torture, a masterclass in escalating dread. Lily would periodically relay more messages from her unseen friend, each one more invasive, more personal, chipping away at my composure. "He says you're scared. He can smell it. He says your heart beats too fast. He wants to hold it to make it quiet." I was a prisoner in that brightly lit, multi-million-dollar living room, too terrified to even go to the bathroom. Every shadow a potential doorway, every faint creak of the building settling the sound of him stretching, moving, getting closer. When the parents finally returned, flushed with wine and good humor, I practically fled, mumbling some excuse about an early class, my smile a brittle mask over sheer panic. It was only when I was safe in my own bed, the familiar sounds of my own apartment around me, my heart still thumping a frantic rhythm, that I checked my phone gallery and saw it. I must have taken it by accident, my finger brushing the screen in my panic when I saw the shadow in the hallway. It was a low-angle shot, slightly blurry, pointing down the hall towards Lily's room. And there, peering from the dark, vertical crack near the ceiling, was not a shadow, but a face, gaunt and stretched like taffy, with eyes that were solid, glossy black, like obsidian, and a mouth stretched into a wide, silent grin of needle-like teeth. Far too many teeth. He wasn't in the wall anymore. He was watching me, and the most terrifying part, the detail that sealed this nightmare into my soul forever, was that in the reflection of those black, glossy, soulless eyes, I could see the tiny, perfect, crystal-clear image of my own horrified face, my mouth wide in a silent scream. He hadn't just been watching me. He had taken a selfie with my reflection, a permanent souvenir of the night I learned that some imaginary friends are all too real, and they are not friendly at all. I've always been a light sleeper, my mind refusing to fully shut down. So when my new neighbor moved into the adjacent apartment and started playing his music late at night, it felt like a special, personalized kind of torture designed just for me. It wasn't loud, raging party music with a pounding bass line, nothing so crude or understandable. It was a low, droning, ambient sound, a single, repetitive, atonal bass note that thrummed relentlessly through the plaster and brick wall we shared, a vibration I could feel in my teeth, a resonance that seemed to crawl inside my skull and set up a permanent home behind my eyes. It would start with an unnerving precision at 2:17 a.m. every single night and would stop, just as abruptly, at 4:17 a.m., a 2-hour window of auditory violation that left me frayed and hollowed out by morning. I tried talking to him, a pale, gaunt man with deep-set eyes who never quite looked at me, who always seemed to be listening to something else just over my shoulder. But he just mumbled a hollow apology, his voice a dry rustle, and closed the door without another word. The landlord did nothing, citing the low volume and the fact that it was technically music, not noise. I bought expensive, industrial-grade earplugs, a state-of-the-art white noise machine that generated everything from rainforest sounds to pink noise, but nothing worked. That infernal, primal drone penetrated everything, a frequency that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the reptile part of my brain, fraying my last nerve, stealing my sleep, painting permanent, bruise-like dark circles under my eyes. I started to change, to curdle from the inside out. I became irritable, snapping at my colleagues over minor mistakes, seeing their confused, hurt faces as a personal attack. A deep-seated paranoia took root. The world outside my apartment began to feel thin, insubstantial, like a cheap veneer painted over something jagged, monstrous, and profoundly wrong. The drone was doing something to me, rewiring me. I was sure of it, sanding down my sanity one endless night at a time. One night, driven to the absolute brink of insanity, my body trembling with a mixture of rage and a terrifying, burgeoning curiosity, I pressed my ear directly against the cool, vibrating wall, determined to understand the source of this auditory poison, to find a flaw in the sound, a rhythm, anything. And I heard it, underneath the monotonous surface drone, something else. A voice or countless voices layered into one, whispering, speaking in a language that was all guttural stops and sibilant, snake-like hisses, a language that felt ancient, profane, and mechanically precise. And the most terrifying thing, the thing that truly broke me, was that I understood it. It was whispering my deepest, most hidden thoughts, my secret shames, the cruel, vile things I'd only ever thought in my darkest, most honest moments, reflecting my own rotting soul back at me with a clinical, dispassionate accuracy. I jerked away from the wall, sweating and nauseous, my heart palpitating. This was no ordinary noise complaint. This was an infestation, a psychological siege. The next day, sleep-deprived and burning with a desperate, frantic energy, I did something I'm not proud of, something the old me would never have contemplated. I waited for him to leave, listening for the click of his lock, and with a credit card and a pic I'd watched a YouTube tutorial on, I breached his apartment. The place was barren, almost completely unfurnished, and reeked of stale incense and something else underneath, something coppery and metallic, like old blood. In the center of the bare living room floor, where the sound was the loudest, thrumming up through the floorboards, there was no speaker, no stereo system. Instead, there was a complex geometric pattern drawn on the bare wood in what looked like a mixture of ash and salt, and in the precise epicenter of it all sat a small, black, obsidian box, no larger than a deck of cards, humming with that same, familiar, soul-shattering drone. As I stared at it, mesmerized and horrified, the whispering started again. But this time it wasn't reciting my sins. It was offering me things, temptations, the name of the colleague I hated, and a simple, foolproof way to make her disappear. The combination to the locked safe in my boss's office, the secrets of the universe, answers to questions I hadn't even thought to ask. All for a price I was too terrified to ask, a price that hung in the air, unspoken but understood. I ran. I never went back. I moved out a week later, forfeiting my deposit, telling my friends I needed a change of scenery. But I can't escape it, because now, in the blessed, expensive silence of my new apartment, in the quiet moments before sleep claims me, I can still hear it, that low, droning hum, that seductive, knowing whisper, and I know with a dreadful certainty that it's not coming from the walls anymore. It's coming from inside my own head, a self-sustaining echo of that box's malevolent frequency. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I find my own lips moving, forming the words of that terrible, beautiful, empowering language. And the truly horrifying part, the secret I can never confess, is that I'm starting to like it, I'm starting to listen, and I'm afraid that soon, very soon, I'm going to start answering. We found the game in my grandmother's attic, tucked away inside a mildewed, leather-bound trunk that smelled of cedar and forgotten years, nestled between her old wedding dress and a stack of yellowed National Geographic magazines. A simple, beautiful wooden board, beautifully carved with the alphabet, numbers 0 through 9, and the words yes and no in the corners, accompanied by a small, heart-shaped planchette made of polished oak that felt warm and strangely alive in my hands. It was a talking board, an antique Ouija, and for a group of bored teenagers on a rain-lashed, thunderous October night, with the power flickering in and out, it was the perfect source of spooky fun, a way to mock the shadows and feel brave in the face of the storm. We lit a circle of candles, their flames casting dancing, monstrous shapes on the wood-paneled walls, placed our fingertips lightly on the planchette, and with giggles and mock seriousness, I asked the empty, charged air, "Is anyone there?" To our collective shock, it moved, smoothly, confidently, as if pulled by an invisible thread, gliding directly to yes. A nervous excitement buzzed between us. My friend Sarah asked, "What is your name?" Spelled out with a slow, deliberate pace, ANNA. We asked how she died. The planchette didn't hesitate, sliding to the letters, SHOKED. The mood in the room shifted instantly from fun to genuine, nervous tension. The giggles replaced by a thick, apprehensive silence. We asked more questions, and it answered, telling us it was a little girl from the 1920s, just 8 years old, lost and lonely and looking for friends. We felt a pang of sorrow for her, this phantom child trapped in a board. Then my friend Jake, always the loud skeptic, smirked and leaned forward, his voice a challenge. "Prove it. Do something right now. Show us you're real." The planchette didn't move for a long, breathless moment, sitting inert under our trembling fingers. Then slowly it slid to an O. Then it spelled out, NOTHERE. Then, with a sudden, alarming speed, INTHEHOUSE. A cold dread, solid and immovable, filled the room, sucking the air from our lungs. From directly downstairs, we heard a single, loud, deliberate thump, like a heavy book being dropped on the floor. We all jumped, letting out strained, nervous laughs, quickly blaming the old house, the storm, the wind, anything but the thing we had just invited in. But then the planchette started moving again, fast and frantic, jerking under our hands as if it had a life of its own. WATCHOUT, it spelled. Then it shot upwards, pointing directly at the rain-streaked window. We all turned our heads in unison. Outside, in the storm-darkened backyard, the old tire swing hanging from the massive oak tree began to move, twisting and untwisting on its rope in a violent, jerky motion, as if an invisible, furious child was playing on it, playing too hard. At that exact moment, every single candle in the room flickered and went out simultaneously, plunging us into a darkness broken only by the occasional flash of lightning, and we screamed, tearing our hands from the planchette as if it were white-hot, fumbling desperately for the light switch, for our phones, for any source of light to banish the suffocating blackness. We swore a pact never to touch it again, blaming it all on a collective prank, a shared hallucination fueled by suggestion and fear, desperately trying to convince ourselves our minds had played a terrifying trick on us. We were so catastrophically wrong. The next day, small, inexplicable things started happening, subtle at first, then growing bolder. Doors we had firmly closed were found standing wide open. A child's soft, melodic laughter would echo from a completely empty room, cutting off the second you entered. The faint, sweet smell of my grandmother's old perfume, Shalimar, would appear in a hallway and then vanish a moment later. We wrote it off as residual spookiness, our imagination still hyper-aware, until the day I was alone in the house, and I heard a faint, wet, choking sound, a gurgling struggle for air, coming from the guest bedroom at the end of the hall. I pushed the door open, my heart a frantic drum in my throat, my palms slick with sweat. The room was empty, the bed neatly made, but on the dusty surface of the antique dresser, a message was written in a fine, greasy, dark dust, as if drawn by a thin, dirty finger. "You let me in." We tried to get rid of the board then, in a panic. We broke it and burned it in the backyard, blessed the ashes with salt, and I threw the unburned planchette into the deepest, fastest-moving part of the river miles from our home. It didn't matter. We had misunderstood the fundamental nature of the situation. Anna wasn't in the board. The board was just a key, a focus, a single point of entry, and we, in our foolish curiosity, had turned that key, unlocking a door inside our own home, inside our very lives, and the thing that called itself Anna had stepped through. The activity escalated from playful to menacing, from eerie to malicious. Kitchen knives would go missing and reappear, laid neatly on our pillows while we slept. I'd catch a fleeting glimpse of a small, pale face with dark eyes reflected in the black screen of the microwave for a split second before it vanished. And the wet, choking sounds grew louder, more frequent, more desperate, seeming to come from just behind the shower curtain or the other side of a closed door. The final straw, the moment that broke us, was when my little brother, who knew nothing of the game, who was too young to even spell Ouija, started talking incessantly about his new friend, the sad girl with the red marks on her neck who can't breathe right. We had a priest come, a medium, we tried everything, but they all said the same thing, their faces grim. The entity was too strong, too rooted, too clever. It wasn't a little girl at all, they whispered, but something ancient and deeply malicious wearing a dead child's memory like a skin suit. A parasite feeding on our fear and our family's energy. We had to move. We sold the house at a loss, told the new, smiling owners nothing. A sin of omission that haunts me more than any ghost ever could. A cowardice that stains my soul. But last week, I got a letter from my mother, who still lives in that town. She mentioned in passing, a casual piece of gossip, that the new family in my grandmother's old house, they have a little girl, a sweet thing with pigtails. And she started sleepwalking, standing in the exact center of her room in the dead of night, her eyes wide open and unseeing, speaking in a voice that is not her own, a raspy, choked, gurgling whisper, asking for me, asking for her old friend, by name. I let her in, and now she's found a new way out, and the door can never be closed again.